This lesson is all about angle pairs and the different ways that two angles can relate to each other. First, we're going to talk about adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are two angles that share a vertex and a side. Now, adjacent is really just a fancy word for things that are next door to each other. Adjacent apartments share a wall. You see the same idea here. Adjacent angles share a side. They're next door neighbors. Vertical angles are a type of angle pair. You will see a lot of this here. Vertical angles are angles whose sides are opposite rays, like this angle and this angle. But it's a lot simpler to think of vertical angles as angles that are opposite sides of an x made where two lines cross. So we have a pair of vertical angles here and here, yes, but we also have another pair of opposite angles in the x, here and here. Add this to your picture of vertical angles to the right of your page. These two angle pairs probably sound familiar. Two angles are called complementary to each other if they add up to 90 degrees together. Two angles are considered supplementary angles if together they make 180 degrees. It's pretty easy to forget which term stands for which degree sum, so here's the trick. See what happens when you add a line to the C in complementary? It looks kind of like a 9, as in 90 degrees. But if you add a line to the S in supplementary, it looks like an 8, as in 180. Next, we're going to use facts about angle pairs to solve problems. Let's try question 1. These two angles are complementary. As you know, that means that they add up to 90 degrees. So let's add that information to your diagram. Together, they equal 90 degrees. Then translate that into an equation. Take a moment to solve for x, and pause the video while you do so. Press pause now. Check that you got x equals 7. But you're not done. They're asking for the measure of each angle, so you have to take that answer for x and plug it back in. Go ahead and do that, pausing the video while you do so. You should get 49 and 41 as your final answers. Now, a quick, easy way to check your answers is to make sure they really are complementary angles. If we take 49 and 41 and add them, they really do add up to 90 degrees. Now, take out your postulate paper. This type of angle pair actually has its own postulate. A linear pair of angles are angles that are adjacent to each other that also form a straight line. The rule goes like this. If you have a linear pair, then that pair of angles are supplementary. They have to add up to 180 degrees. Now go back to your notes. Try the entirety of question 2. Press pause until you're done. They tell you that these two angles form a linear pair. So that means they have to be supplementary and add up to 180 degrees. After you set up your equation, you want to identify like terms that are already on the same side of the equal sign, like the 12x and the 6x, and the negative 4 and the positive 4 here. In the end, you should have x equals 10, but don't forget to take that number and plug it back in to find the width of each angle. Your final answers should be 116 and 64 degrees. And with a quick check, you can see that they really do add up to 180. We have one last definition today, so go ahead and copy it down where it says angle bisector on your page. An angle bisector is a ray that cuts through the exact center of an angle, splitting it into equal halves. Because of this, when you're told that you have an angle bisector, you can always add congruency marks to the two equal angles in the diagram. A quick note about the textbook. Figures in the textbook are not always drawn to scale. So just because two angles look like they're the same size does not mean that they actually are. Also, if you have two angles that the diagram mark as congruent, trust the textbook even if they don't quite look right. Take a look at question 3. They tell us that ray BD here is an angle bisector, so that tells us we can add congruency marks to our diagram for the two angles. Knowing that we have two congruent angles helps us set up our equation. Go ahead and solve for x. Press pause until you've done so. If you got x equals 7, great job! Go back and read the question though. They're not just asking what x is, they're asking for the angle DBC. So plug that back in. If you get 54 degrees for your answer to angle DBC, great job! You are now done with today's notes and are free to start today's homework assignment listed on Schoology.